Good morning, Les.
Morning.
Happy Easter.
Morning.
Sunday back in the shop, just on our union break. And I'm reading some of the comments of my previous video from yesterday, getting the body off the car to Les. And it seems like a couple of my viewers are upset with me for my treatment of Les. You know. So what do you have to say to that, Les?
Well, you're kind of a nasty guy, but a good guy.
This could be bad. You want me to come back? Do you want to think about it a little bit less before you reply?
No, I don't want to sound like you in a whiny kind of way. I'd sooner be not narrow-minded, open-minded, and sympathetic for your wants and needs.
What does that mean?
You know, if you have to belittle me or make me feel inferior, you know, and it gets you through the day with the hardships in the world right now and the way society is, then so be it. It's okay. I'm thick-skinned. I was made in England.
So you're here for me, is that what you're saying, Les?
Made in England.
You're helping me get through this,
I've seen all
you're helping me get through these
different
trying
things.
times.
I've seen lots of different worldly people, situations. I've seen people in Africa when I was in Africa.
So
Not a problem.
do you forgive me, Les, for being mean to you?
Well, I always forgive you, Dave, because, I mean, if there was a lineup of fellas that could help me with the car, I could pick and choose who I want. I'd have to think about which ones I could choose over you.
Well, that's good to know, Les. All right, so we'll pick up Les's restoration today, or maybe not. We'll see what happens.
But you know how to make those magic fudge things better than anybody I know.
Magic squares.
Magic squares better than my mom, better than my nana or my wife.
So that's why you're keeping
So
me around?
I'll put up with you.
Okay, well that's good to know, Les. At least I can do something right. All right, so back on the 76 Triumph TR6 project this morning with Les, and I just wanted to do a really quick talk about what the plans are, what we're up to. Some people have not watched all the videos and they're maybe just jumping in after yesterday's video, or they may have caught a video along the way. So what the plan is, some of you may not know that there is another car waiting in the wings to come into the shop. It's a 73, I believe, TR6 body tub that's had all of the body work done on it previously. It was an abandoned project by the previous owner. So the body is very good on the other car. We're not so sure yet about the frame, but the body is very good. So we know that we're going to use the body tub, or we believe that we're going to use the body tub from the gray car. The green car, the 76 that's in front of us, had some previous body damage, so we were looking for a better body to rebody the car with. As far as mechanical components are concerned, this 76, we're going to strip the frame entirely, and we are going to obviously restore, refresh, repaint, rebuild whatever we need to do with all the components off the 76. We are also going to have a look at the components that come off of the 73 and see which car has the best components to work with going forward. So that's the plan. So we're going to strip basically both cars down completely and then build them up after we, of course, go through the whole sort of restoration phase on the parts. That means picking a frame, getting that stripped, fixed, either powder coated or painted, etc., and then building the car back up from there. So that's really the plan. Hopefully that makes sense to you, and we can move forward. First thing we're going to do today is we're going to get the wheels off the car. Les has got his impact over there, so we'll buzz those off and we'll get started on today's work. See you in a bit. All right, so Les is working on getting the rims off. That's the first thing we're going to do this morning. And then I think we'll work from the rear forwards. That's the plan anyway, right? Excellent job, Les.
Gee, thanks, Dave. Thanks for the credit.
No problem.
All right.
You're doing a fantastic job.
Well, that's all your fans want to hear too.
That's right. All right, we'll come back. Okay, Les is going to start with the prop shaft. So he's going to take the prop shaft off. And then I think what I'll do is I'll start working on the lever shocks here at the rear. We'll get those removed off the car. We were debating on taking the exhaust off first, but I think we'll do that a little bit later on. So I'll start by taking the lever shocks off both sides. Get the lever shocks off, it's fairly easy. One bolt on the bottom here underneath the trailing arm, and I got two bolts actually here attached to the cross member. Those look like they might be needing to be cleaned up so I can get an actual socket on there or a wrench on there. Yeah, this frame's actually pretty dirty and pretty sandy, so it makes it getting to the fasteners a little difficult. Okay, so we've got the hub out and the brake backing plate off. So all I've done is just disconnected the connection here at the trailing arm. We've kept the hard line on the back of the brake back plate. So we've got all the wheel cylinder, the adjuster on the bottom still attached. So we'll just leave that like that for now. Obviously got the brake drum off. This one didn't have the two screws that attach the brake drum to the hub. Got obviously the brake shoes off, and we've pulled out the rear hub, which basically comes out from the interior of the trailing arm. It's a sliding spline here, so it just pulls straight out after when you undo these 5 bolts that attach that to the brake back plate and the hub. Les is doing the same on the other side. It's a learning curve for him, so he's taking his time. And being careful. So these studs are often stripped out because they are only torqued to 16 foot-pounds, and a lot of guys just Armstrong them when they put these on, and they end up stripping out the trailing arm studs. So a lot of people actually helicoil these, and that'll be a decision that Les will have to make in the future. All right. So now that we've got the rear hub out on the driver's side, we can now lower that floor jack. I've just raised it just to turn the axle a little bit easier. So we're just going to lower that now, and that'll allow us to lower that trailing arm enough to get the spring out now. So we're going to do that now. So I'm not sure what this guy was trying to accomplish. Maybe he had a bit of a bachelor lean on this car, but he had 4 spring packings in the bottom of the trailing arm trying to, I guess, level this side of the car out. I guess that's what he decided to do as opposed to a hard aluminum or steel spacer. Anyway, so 4 on the bottom, and he's got 1 on the top, as it should be. So the spring is out, and Les is still, oh, look at that, Les. Very good. That came out very easily.
Yeah.
Mine I had to struggle a little bit. Yeah, that's just the clip for the gator. Okay.
Hold the rubber on.
Good. So now you need to do this brake line up the front, Les, that we talked about. Les doesn't need to go to the gym tonight.
We're gonna put this.
Put it on the floor next to the rest of your
You know, it
parts.
also has a grease nipple in there where the U-joint is.
Yeah, it's hard to get to because that ends up being sort of towards the inside of the trailing arm, so it's a pain to actually grease it.
We can't put an extension on them.
You can, but you can hardly
Buy
access
a little
it.
valve with a little nipple extension.
So the problem is, Les, where it is in the trailing arm, it's hard to access it, and you can't put a long extension in because the long extension will foul on the inside of the trailing arm as the axle turns. So it's very difficult to get to. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my trailing arms. This emergency brake bracket or cable is still attached to the trailing arm. I find it easier just to leave it attached until you get the trailing arm off the car to remove that entirely. There's a little square nut on the bottom of this, or a little nut on the bottom of this here that attaches this to the trailing arm. So we'll just undo these 4 bolts here from the inside of the trailing arm, and we'll just lift that trailing arm right away from the car. All right, a couple things on the driver's side trailing arm. First of all, I just want to talk about this trailing arm repair. It looks like this was done without the body coming off. Because if you look carefully here, there's no weld here. There's no weld there. There's no weld over here. So that's what happens when you do this repair with the body still on. It's not a perfect repair by all means. So anyway, I thought I'd just point that out. Second thing, okay, the trailing arm's ready to come off. And if you're going back with the frame that you are planning on using, it's always good to record your shims. So there are shims here on the inner and outbound trailing arms. So just make sure you make note of how many shims there, and if you're again using the same frame, it's usually a good idea to go back as a starting point with the initial shim setup that was in your trailing arm. So we'll go ahead and we'll remove the trailing arm now. I'm going to have to put the camera down because I don't think Les wants to come and help me do this. So I will put the camera down and pull that trailing arm off. Give me a hand removing the trailing arm. And did you hear what I said, Les, about the take note of the shims, the number of shims in these locations here?
Yeah.
So you need to take note of those.
1, 2, 3, 4.
No, shims. Shims.
Oh yeah.
You need to take note of the shims because
that?
because if you're reusing the frame that came with the car, you need to put this back like that.
Oh, because it won't line up.
Yeah, it's alignment.
So that's 2 shims.
Yep,
huh?
yep.
That's 1.
So I suggest when you take this off, just make note of the shims because sometimes they'll fall off now when you remove this, and sometimes they'll mix up. So when I bag these up, I just write, you know, outer bracket, driver's side, 2 shims, and I put the shims in there, and I have a separate bag for the inners. Okay? All right, go ahead and move that. So just pull straight back. There you go. There you go.
It's heavy.
So trailing arm is off, and here's this. Well, if Les just holds this here, there's that little nut I was talking about that holds that square part of the emergency brake cable underneath. All right. Perfect. So that's looking good. So we'll just help Les finish his side, and then we'll move on to another area. Okay, so we just removed the stub axles from the differential. So those were fun. Bolts were pretty tight, so we had a big breaker bar. Those are always fun to get out from underneath the car, as opposed to they're difficult enough on top of the car, but underneath the car they can be even more difficult. So anyway, the stubs are off, so we'll move forward, I think, Les, right? Mm-hmm. Not much else to get off back here, except for the exhaust system. So let's move forward and we'll work on front suspension. All right. Okay, we're going to leave the differential in, and we'll take that off after we flip the frame up on its side, or flip it right over. It's easier to take the diff out that way, I find. So I think what we'll do now is we'll start moving on towards the front suspension. We only got about another hour or so to play out here, so I think what we'll do is we'll attempt to take the shock out of the suspension on both sides, and that'll probably be it for the day. I was saying to Les that sometimes they rust pretty badly to the bottom of the spring pan. I think there's 4 bolts holding the shock in down there. So anyway, we'll attempt to remove those shocks, and then like I said, that'll probably be it for the day. But I'll come back with one more update. All right, guys, we've got the shock out on the driver's side. Les has got his out on the passenger side. So they look like they're fairly new shocks. They're a Monroe shocks, so they're not the greatest quality. So anyway, let Les determine what he wants to do as far as those are concerned. Fairly good notice on the brake calipers. It looks like these are pretty new. The seals look new, the pistons look pretty new inside, and look at all that meat on those brake pads. So it's potentially that those just need to be cleaned up a little bit and then can put back on the car as they are. So that's promising, at least, let's say. So Les is just working on his side over there to remove the line first of all, and then we're going to get the 2 bolts off that hold the caliper on. There they are there. Looks like somebody actually used copper anti-seize there, which is good. So they should be a little easier to get out. All right, I don't think we're going to go any further on the front suspension. We'll tackle that the next time we're out here. Les is just doing a little make work project, and he's just removing those rear brake lines, the little hard line that goes above the differential, and a little union on the frame, and the short rubber lines. We'll take those off at least to get them out of the way. And just a quick note on Les was having some difficulty on his brake caliper, and we have the actual brake caliper bolts here, and someone had put a much smaller bolt in the brake caliper. The thread size is the same, but the head was significantly smaller, so he couldn't figure out why his socket wasn't working. Shit like that happens on these cars. People just put stuff on that they find. So, all right, that's it for now, guys. We'll come back with one last update. All right, we're done for the day. I think it's about 3:30 or so. Anyway, it's Easter, so Les is going to go home and get cleaned up and celebrate Easter with his family. So just a quick update. Obviously, we didn't get much of the front suspension done. We did get the shocks removed, which sometimes can be a bit of a pain if those bottom shock mounts rust onto the studs, but they weren't too bad actually. We had probably more of an issue getting the top nuts off the shock than we did with anything. The lock nuts were kind of rusty and seized, so those were a bit of a pain. Les did remove that rear brake line, so that's off the car. So pretty much what we'll do next time we come up is we're going to attack this front suspension. I brought two spring compressors with me, so Les and I can go on each side at the same time. That should be fun. And then other than that, really it's just pulling the motor and trans and a few other bits off the front of the engine, like the fan will take off. And that finally probably get that radiator protection shield off and the front sway bar at the same time. So of course, obviously the exhaust has to come up. I think that'll probably be the last thing we take off. Hopefully the manifold is not, the manifold studs are not rusted too badly up by the engine downpipe. But other than that, what do you think? Good day today?
Yeah, I'm tired now.
Yeah? Now you can go home and have a nice dinner and relax.
Can ya?
All right, that's it for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll get back out here whenever Les says so. Right, boss?
Tomorrow sometime.
All right. See you then. Happy Easter.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so Les is telling me this is a perfect song for me.
Sensitive.
Hey, Les?
It's
Is that
sensitive.
a perfect song for me or what?
It's sensitive.
All right. See you tomorrow.
It's sensitive.
See you tomorrow, Les.
See you tomorrow, girls.